"Sir, step aside. We need to check your bag, again." He had passed through airports across the world, but this time, something felt different. The stares. The murmurs. The assumptions. They didn't recognize him, and they didn't expect what was coming. What started as another random check was about to turn into a global lesson in power, prejudice, and silent revenge. Jamal Carter had built an empire from the ground up. Raised in a working-class neighborhood in Atlanta, he knew what it meant to be underestimated. He was the kid who fixed broken bikes for neighbors, sold lemonade on corners, and studied by candlelight when the power was cut. Years later, he wasn't just successful, he was a global figure in aviation. After years of climbing through the ranks, first as an engineer, then executive, Jamal made a bold move. He founded Nexus Air, a sleek, modern airline serving over 30 countries. He believed travel should connect people, not divide them. But despite the boardrooms, Forbes features, and millions in net worth, he knew there were some places where success didn't always speak first, skin color did. It was supposed to be a quiet return from a business trip in Paris. If you believe in justice, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story that matters. No cameras, no entourage, just Jamal in a hoodie and jeans, blending into the crowd at JFK International. But as he walked past immigration with his American passport in hand, he noticed the way the customs officers looked past the people in front of him, and zeroed in on him. They weren't smiling. They weren't neutral. They were hunting for a reason. He had seen that look before, in stores, banks, even in luxury hotel lobbies. But here, at an airport he partially owned gates in, he felt the sting sharper than ever. "Sir," one of the officers said, stepping in front of him with practiced authority. "We're going to need to take you aside for a quick check." Random screening. There it was. Random. The word that always meant anything but. He took a breath, forced a polite nod, and followed them into a cold, sterile room. No windows. No apologies. The questions came fast. "Where have you been? Why so many stamps in your passport? Are you traveling alone? Any cash? Any packages? Who packed your bags?" He answered calmly. But inside, something broke. This wasn't just profiling. It was humiliation. And the worst part? They had no idea who he was. Jamal sat silently in the cold interrogation room while agents typed on keyboards, whispered in corners, and glared at him with suspicion. They patted down his coat, rifled through his luggage, and even took his phone, all under the label of standard procedure. But the questions had shifted from routine to personal. "Why do you travel so often? What do you do for work again? You said aviation, can you elaborate?" He had learned to stay calm in these situations. He had learned to wear dignity like armor, because people like him were always expected to either explode or submit. But this time was different. Jamal looked up. Calm, composed, but with a gaze sharp enough to cut through their assumptions. "Do you know who I am?" The room paused. One officer chuckled, assuming arrogance. "Should we?" Jamal didn't flinch. "I'm Jamal Carter, founder and CEO of Nexus Air, the airline whose gate is right outside this terminal. The one that's been bringing millions of travelers through this airport for the past 5 years. I don't just fly through this airport. I help fund it." Silence. The kind of silence that turns faces pale. The kind of silence that replaces ego with panic. The lead officer glanced at the screen, typing quickly. Moments later, the tone in the room changed, but Jamal had already felt what he needed to feel. They hadn't profiled a criminal. They had profiled a black man who built an empire. And that empire had just walked into their little room. The silence in the room grew heavy. The air felt thick with regret. The officers exchanged glances, scrambling for confirmation on their terminals. Within seconds, Jamal's identity popped up, and with it, a full media profile, interviews, corporate holdings, and a Forbes cover titled, "The Man Redefining the Skies." One officer slowly stood up, his demeanor suddenly apologetic. "Mr. Carter. We apologize. This was just a routine screen." Jamal didn't let him finish. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry because you found out who I am." The room froze again. "I've flown into this country countless times. I've watched people like me pulled aside, questioned, humiliated, while others walk through without a glance. You thought I was one of them. Not one of you. And that's the real problem, isn't it?" The second officer tried to recover. "Mr. Carter, please, let me go." "Oh, I'll go," Jamal cut in. But not quietly. He reached for his phone, the one they had just returned, and made a single call. To his legal director. "I want a meeting with airport administration. Today. And I want an internal report filed on what just happened." He stood up, smoothed his coat, and looked each officer in the eye. "Next time you profile someone, make sure they don't own your paychecks." Without another word, he walked out. But not through the main terminal. He was escorted through his airline's private gate, with Nexus Air staff greeting him at the jetway. The same terminal, the same airport, that had just tried to reduce him to a stereotype. As Jamal's plane lifted off, soaring above the very airport where he was just profiled, he looked out the window, not with anger, but with clarity. Because this wasn't the first time. And he knew, it wouldn't be the last. But this time, he had power. And with that power came a responsibility bigger than revenge. By the time the flight landed, headlines were already circulating. Billionaire airline owner profiled at his own airport. Nexus Air's CEO demands federal review of customs discrimination practices. Jamal didn't want apologies. He wanted change. Within a week, the customs agency launched an internal investigation. The officers involved were placed on leave. But more importantly, new bias training policies were implemented across several terminals, with Jamal personally overseeing the rollout. He didn't use his voice to make noise. He used it to make impact. Because Jamal Carter knew. For every powerful black man who could speak up, there were thousands more without a voice, being stopped, searched, and silenced in silence. And so, he made them seen.